obsessed with more. More achievement, more status, more possessions, more stimulation, more comparison, more everything. Yet, in the middle of all this abundance, something essential has quietly slipped away: peace, clarity, and meaning. Welcome to Mind Over Pages. Here we explore powerful ideas, mindset, and personal growth through the thoughtful audiobooks. If you enjoy this content, consider subscribing and supporting the channel. We have built lives full of things, but often empty of purpose. We have filled our calendars, but starved our souls. We have chased the life we thought would bring us joy, only to realize joy was never found in the chase, but in the ability to finally slow down, see clearly, and choose intentionally. Simplicity is not about deprivation. It is not about owning nothing, escaping society, or rejecting ambition. Simplicity is about deciding what deserves space in your life and what doesn't. It's about removing the noise so the signal becomes obvious. It's about choosing quality over quantity, depth over distraction, and fulfillment over accumulation. When less becomes intentional, less becomes powerful. In this audiobook, we will explore how subtracting the unnecessary creates room for what is truly valuable. We will learn how to reclaim our attention, protect our time, refine our priorities, simplify our environment, and build a life that feels lighter to carry and richer to live. You will discover that simplicity is not just a lifestyle. It is a mindset, a discipline, and ultimately, a philosophy for freedom. The chapters ahead will give you practical tools, real strategies, and timeless principles to master the magic of a simple life, where you are no longer overwhelmed by everything around you, but guided by what truly matters within you. This journey is about redesigning your life from the inside out. Let's begin. Chapter 1. Stop letting life overwhelm you. Life has a way of piling up on us when we're not paying attention. Not all at once, but little by little, task by task, notification by notification, expectation by expectation. And before we know it, we aren't living our lives anymore. We're managing them. We're reacting to whatever comes at us instead of directing where we want to go. It feels normal because everyone around us seems to be struggling the same way. But just because something is common doesn't mean it's okay. Being overwhelmed is not a sign of a full life. It's a sign of a cluttered one. Overwhelm happens when everything tries to matter at the same time. Every email, every message, every responsibility, every option, every request, every headline, everything demands your immediate attention. And when everything demands your attention, you end up giving your attention to nothing meaningful. You feel busy but not productive, active but not fulfilled, stimulated but not satisfied. It's exhaustion without progress. And that's the trap. You can spend years in motion without ever moving forward. The first step toward a simpler life is not buying fewer things or cleaning out closets. The first step is stopping the automatic flood of demands on your time, attention, and energy. You must interrupt the pattern of reacting to everything and start choosing what is worth responding to. That requires awareness. It requires the ability to pause. It requires you to ask yourself a simple but powerful question. Is this important, or is it just loud? Loud things overwhelm you. Important things grow you when you stop letting life overwhelm you. You begin to notice something interesting. Not everything needs your involvement. Not everything deserves your worry. Not every problem is yours to carry. Some problems belong to time. Some belong to other people, and some were never problems to begin with. They were just noise. You also start to realize that many of the things that overwhelm you exist only because you never questioned them. You accepted every invitation. You agreed to every responsibility. You held on to every expectation. You said yes when you should have said no. Overwhelm is rarely something life does to you. More often, it's something you allow by default. That may sound uncomfortable, but it's actually good news because if you allowed it, you can also change it. Stopping overwhelm doesn't require perfect discipline. It requires ownership. Ownership of your time, ownership of your choices, ownership of your boundaries. Without ownership, your life belongs to other people's priorities, other people's urgency, and other people's desires. With ownership, your life becomes yours again. And when life becomes yours again, things begin to simplify naturally. Now, here is the part most people miss. Simplicity is not about having less to manage. It's about having less that needs managing. There's a big difference. You can declutter your home and still have a cluttered mind. You can delete apps and still have a chaotic calendar. You can organize your tasks and still feel emotionally overloaded. The real work happens inside. It happens when you choose what really matters and release what doesn't. When life stops overwhelming you, you gain something extremely valuable. Mental breathing room, space to think, space to feel, space to make better decisions, space to actually live instead of just cope, space to hear yourself again. That space is where simplicity begins, and more importantly, where fulfillment grows. Chapter 2. Decide what actually matters. One of the biggest sources of complexity in life isn't the number of things you do, but the number of things you think you must care about. Modern life pressures you to value everything. Every trend, every opportunity, every opinion, every possible path, every problem in the world. When everything matters, nothing matters deeply. And when nothing matters deeply, your life becomes a scattered collection of shallow priorities instead of a focused pursuit of meaningful ones. Deciding what actually matters isn't about making a list. It's about making a decision about the kind of person you want to be and the kind of life you want to build. Without that decision, you will drift into other people's priorities, other people's expectations, and other people's definition of success. Drifting is comfortable because it doesn't require clarity. It doesn't ask you to choose. But drifting never leads to fulfillment. Drifting leads to regret. Fulfillment, on the other hand, begins with conscious choice, especially the choice of what truly deserves your attention, time, and energy. When you lack clarity, life becomes heavier. Everything feels urgent. Everything feels personal. Everything feels like it requires your immediate involvement. But when you gain clarity on what matters, complexity begins to fall away. Unnecessary commitments become obvious. Unimportant responsibilities lose their grip. Distractions reveal themselves for what they are, not temptations, but detours. You can't optimize a life you haven't defined. You can't simplify a life you haven't examined. You can't prioritize a life you haven't claimed as your own. To decide what matters, start by asking a better set of questions. Questions that many people never pause long enough to consider. What do I value more? Time or status? Freedom or approval? Depth or variety? Peace or noise? Progress or appearance? These questions expose what truly drives you. They also expose what truly drains you. The answers are personal, and they are often not the answers society expects. And that's precisely why clarity is powerful. It frees you from living someone else's story. Another helpful question is, what would make my life feel meaningful if everything else disappeared? This question cuts through the clutter. It removes the background noise of trends, achievement, comparison, and social pressure. It shifts you from wanting more to wanting what is essential. For many people, the answers that arise are shockingly simple. Time with loved ones, meaningful contribution, personal growth, creative expression, peace, health, or spiritual groundedness. Few people say, I just need more notifications, or I need a bigger closet, or I wish I had more digital distractions. Those things often show up only when we stop thinking and start consuming. Once you identify what matters, the real work begins. Because simplicity isn't achieved by knowing, it's achieved by aligning. Alignment means your daily choices match your deeper values. And here's where most people get stuck. Values are easy to declare, but difficult to live. You can say you value health, but spend your days in habits that destroy it. You can say you value family, but spend no intentional time with them. You can say you value peace, but fill every empty moment with stimulation and noise. Values without alignment create guilt. Values with alignment create fulfillment. The good news is that alignment doesn't require dramatic overnight change. It doesn't require perfection. It doesn't require abandoning your responsibilities. It simply requires awareness and adjustment. A little alignment every week compounds into a radically different life over time. The question is not, can I redesign my entire life today? The question is, can I make one choice today that honors what I truly value? One healthier choice. One deeper conversation. One clearer boundary. One intentional pause. Small alignment is more powerful than grand intentions. Another key part of deciding what matters is recognizing that priority demands sacrifice. You cannot prioritize everything. When everything is a priority, nothing is. Choosing what matters means being at peace with what doesn't. And this is where people begin to resist simplicity, because simplicity requires loss. Not financial loss, but emotional loss. The loss of the fantasy of having it all. The loss of trying to please everyone. The loss of keeping every door open. True focus requires closing doors. True priority requires saying no. True simplicity requires letting go. This can feel uncomfortable at first, but on the other side of discomfort is liberation. When you decide what matters, you also decide who matters. Some relationships nourish you, others drain you. Some connections challenge you to grow, others keep you stuck. Some people want you to succeed, others only want you available. Reducing relational complexity is one of the highest forms of self-respect. That doesn't mean abandoning people. It means no longer abandoning yourself. Ultimately, deciding what matters is an act of courage. It is easier to follow the script that was handed to you. It is easier to pursue what everyone else pursues. It is easier to stay busy than to sit with clarity. But easy does not lead to meaningful. Easy leads to predictable. Easy leads to average. Meaningful begins when you choose direction rather than drift. So pause, take a breath, and ask yourself, if my life was simpler, what would it be filled with? Whatever your answer is, that's the beginning of clarity. And clarity is the foundation upon which the magic of a simple life is built. Chapter 3. Remove what doesn't serve you. Once you decide what truly matters, the next challenge is clearing out everything that doesn't. And this is where most lives stay cluttered. Not because people don't know what they want, but because they don't remove what stands in the way. We tend to think simplification is about addition, adding better habits, adding routines, adding new strategies. But simplicity has always been a subtractive art. It is about removing, eliminating, cutting away, and letting go. When you stop trying to carry everything, life becomes lighter by design. The things that don't serve you show up in many forms. Some are obvious, like toxic relationships or time-wasting habits. Others are subtle, like outdated beliefs, hidden expectations, unnecessary obligations, and goals you no longer genuinely care about, but continue to pursue out of habit, ego, or fear of disappointing others. Life becomes complicated not because we keep seeking joy, but because we keep holding on to everything we've outgrown. Start by looking at where your time goes. Time is the clearest indicator of what is consuming your life. You may discover that you are investing hours in activities that drain you, commitments that don't matter, and distractions that steal your attention without giving anything meaningful in return. Not everything that is enjoyable is valuable, and not everything that is valuable is enjoyable. But when something consumes your life without contributing to it, it becomes a thief, and thieves must be removed. Then look at your mental environment. What beliefs, stories, and assumptions clutter your mind? Maybe you're holding on to guilt about saying no. Maybe you believe productivity must always feel stressful. Maybe you think success means doing more instead of doing what actually moves the needle. Some beliefs served you once, but they don't serve you anymore. They belong to an older version of you, a version who didn't know what you know now. Growth requires updates, and updates often begin with unlearning. There is also emotional clutter, old resentments, grudges, comparisons, and attachments that consume energy quietly in the background. Emotional clutter is heavy because it takes space even when you're not actively thinking about it. You can go about your day pretending you're fine, but the emotional load weighs you down like an invisible backpack. Letting go isn't just a poetic idea. It's a practical strategy for reclaiming capacity. You cannot carry both old pain and new possibility. One must be released for the other to arrive. And then, of course, there are people. Not every person you meet in life is meant to stay. Some relationships are meant for a season. Others are meant for a lesson, and a rare few are meant for life. The problem is when we hold on to seasonal relationships as if they are lifelong assignments. There are people who once supported you but now limit you. People who once inspired you but now drain you. People who once shared your path but now resist your growth. Removing what doesn't serve you sometimes means redefining relationships, not with cruelty but with clarity. Removing what doesn't serve you can feel uncomfortable at first. It might feel harsh. It might feel selfish. It might feel unfamiliar, but simplicity is not about being harsh or selfish. It's about being aligned. You were not designed to carry every responsibility, every expectation, every obligation, and every person who crosses your path. You were designed to choose, and choosing requires letting go. There's another layer to removal that people often overlook: removing opportunities. Opportunities are praised in modern culture. People say never say no to opportunity. But the truth is, too many opportunities are just distractions disguised as progress. Not every open door leads somewhere worth going. One of the most mature forms of wisdom is to stop chasing everything that shines and start selecting only what fits your direction. Every time you remove something that doesn't serve you, you create space. And space is a powerful asset. Space gives you room to think, room to breathe, room to redirect your efforts into what matters. Space gives your values actual territory to exist in. Without space, even good things suffocate. With space, even a few meaningful things can flourish. This removal process doesn't need to happen overnight. It doesn't need to be dramatic. It simply needs to be honest. You don't remove things because you dislike them. You remove them because they don't support the life you want to build. There's a difference, and that difference is what turns simplicity from an aesthetic into a philosophy. At some point, you realize that a simpler life isn't created by adding more. It's created by removing the unnecessary. It's created by releasing what once felt important but now feels heavy. It's created by embracing the courage to walk away from what no longer aligns with your values. Removing what doesn't serve you is not the end of freedom. It is the beginning of it. Chapter 4. Keep fewer. Choose better. A simple life isn't defined by having nothing. It's defined by having the right things. When you keep fewer but choose better, you stop drowning in the noise of excess and start thriving in the richness of quality. Most people don't suffer from a lack of options. They suffer from an overload of them. Too many choices, too many possessions, too many projects, too many goals, too many social circles, too many opinions, too many demands for their attention. And yet, very few of these choices contribute meaningfully to their peace, their growth, or their fulfillment. Quality is a function of selection. When you choose better, you don't need more. You don't need 5 mediocre friendships. When 2 deeply aligned ones give you more support, more meaning, and more connection. You don't need a closet full of clothes you don't wear. When a handful of well-chosen pieces make you feel confident and ready, you don't need 20 goals competing for your energy. When 3 well-chosen ones will transform your life. The paradox is simple. When you raise your standards, your demand for quantity naturally decreases. But to choose better, you have to know what better means to you. Better doesn't mean more expensive, more luxurious, or more prestigious. It means more aligned. More aligned with your values, your priorities, your identity, and the life you want to build. Better means things that add to your days instead of cluttering them. Better means things that move you forward instead of holding you in place. Better means things that serve you instead of owning you. Choosing better also means choosing deliberately. Many people choose reactively. They buy because it's on sale. They say yes because they feel obligated. They commit because it looks impressive. They collect responsibilities because everyone else seems to. But deliberate choosing means asking questions before you acquire or commit. Why do I want this? Do I actually need this? Will I use this? Does this align with what matters to me? Even pausing long enough to ask these questions will change what you bring into your life. The same principle applies beyond possessions. It applies to activities. Not every activity deserves space on your calendar. Many people are busy but not effective. Their days are crowded with filler things that make them feel active but don't make their lives richer. Choosing better means building days filled with high-value activities. Deep work instead of busy work. Conversation instead of chatter. Learning instead of scrolling. Experiences instead of consumption. Rest instead of burnout, disguised as productivity. Relationships also benefit from the fewer but better approach. Social quantity is easily overestimated. We're conditioned to believe more friends equal a more fulfilling life. But fulfillment doesn't come from being widely known. It comes from being deeply understood. When you invest in fewer relationships, you create depth. You create trust. You create shared meaning. Shallow connections drain energy because they require performance. Deep connections replenish energy because they allow authenticity. Not everyone deserves access to your inner world. Access is earned, and it should be rare. When you choose better goals, something interesting happens. You stop competing and start building. Many people chase goals that don't belong to them. Goals inherited from culture, family, or ego. They work hard for achievements they don't genuinely care about and then feel strangely empty when they reach them. Better goals are not based on appearances. They are based on alignment. They energize you instead of draining you. They transform you instead of distracting you. They reward you with meaning instead of applause. Choosing better also affects your environment. A cluttered environment creates a cluttered mind. Every object takes a small amount of attention. Every unfinished project takes a mental bookmark. Every unnecessary possession takes space that could be used for something more meaningful or for nothing, which is sometimes even more valuable. Space itself is not emptiness. Space is potential. When you own fewer things, the things you own are easier to appreciate, maintain, and enjoy. But here's the deeper truth. Choosing better is a continuous practice, not a one-time decision. Your needs evolve, your tastes evolve, your priorities evolve. What was better for you 3 years ago might not be better for you now. A simple life stays simple because it gets recalibrated. When life feels heavy, it's often a sign that your calibration is overdue. Choosing better also demands patience. Quality rarely appears quickly. Deep relationships take time. Skill mastery takes time. Meaningful goals take time. Acting slowly in a world obsessed with speed feels rebellious, but in the most liberating way. When you choose better, you are no longer impressed by how fast you acquire things. You are impressed by how deeply you experience them. Ultimately, keeping fewer and choosing better is an act of self-respect. It says, my life is too valuable to fill with things that don't matter. It says, I am allowed to be selective. It says, I would rather have a life that is deep, meaningful, and aligned than one that is crowded, busy, and hollow. And in a world that urges you to accumulate endlessly, that kind of selectiveness is not only powerful, it's revolutionary. Chapter 5. Break free from the pressure to accumulate. We live in a culture that subtly and sometimes aggressively teaches us to measure our worth by how much we acquire. More possessions, more upgrades, more achievements, more experiences, more status, more followers, more everything. The pressure is constant. It shows up in marketing, in conversations, in social media, in comparison, in family expectations, and even in the goals we set for ourselves without questioning why we want them. This pressure to accumulate isn't just about owning more things. It's about proving something, proving success, proving relevance, proving capability, proving identity. But the moment you tie your value to accumulation, you set yourself up for a life of endless chasing. Accumulation has no finish line. There is always another level. A better house, a newer phone, a bigger title, a more impressive milestone. The problem isn't aspiration. Aspiration is healthy. The problem is the inability to feel complete without the next acquisition. When you can't feel satisfied unless you have more, you lose the ability to enjoy what you currently have. Satisfaction gets postponed. Gratitude gets muted. Presence gets replaced by anticipation. You're always looking ahead, never appreciating. Now, to break free from this pressure, you must first understand where it comes from. A large part is cultural conditioning. You were born into a world where accumulation is praised and minimalism is misunderstood. Children are rewarded with toys. Teens are rewarded with gadgets. Teens are rewarded with gadgets. Adults are rewarded with upgrades. The message is consistent. More means better. You're not told to curate, to choose intentionally, or to question what you bring into your life. You're told to get, to keep, and to display. Another part comes from comparison. We don't accumulate in isolation. We accumulate in relation to others. If everyone around you seemed content with less, accumulation wouldn't feel necessary. But when everyone is displaying their highlight reels, it creates an artificial benchmark. You don't compare yourself to reality. You compare yourself to presentation. Presentation always looks better, and so you chase not for joy, but for parity. Then there's the emotional layer. Many people accumulate to soothe discomfort, shopping to feel better, upgrading to feel relevant, owning to feel secure, buying to feel accomplished. But emotional accumulation is never truly satisfying because it tries to solve internal issues with external solutions. You can fill your closet, your shelves, and your storage units. But if you never fill the internal gaps, the emptiness returns quickly. Fulfillment doesn't come from accumulation. It comes from alignment. Breaking free doesn't mean rejecting possessions or abandoning ambition. It means rejecting dependency on accumulation for identity. It means shifting from acquiring to curating. It means asking what adds value to my life instead of what do other people expect from me. It means choosing based on who you are, not who you're trying to impress. One of the most liberating realizations you can come to is that you don't need to own everything you admire. You can appreciate things without acquiring them. You can enjoy experiences without documenting them. You can celebrate others' success without feeling deficient in your own. When admiration replaces acquisition, life becomes lighter. You also begin to realize that accumulation isn't just physical, it's mental. People accumulate unfinished projects, unmade decisions, unprocessed emotions, and unfiltered information. These invisible forms of accumulation create even more stress than material possessions. You might be surrounded by objects, but what exhausts you is being surrounded by obligations. That's why some people declutter their home and still feel overwhelmed. The mental clutter remains untouched. Breaking free means decluttering both the physical and the psychological. Another overlooked truth: accumulation steals time. Everything you acquire must be managed, cleaned, organized, repaired, upgraded, stored, insured, or replaced. Owning more doesn't just cost money, it costs time. And time is the currency you never get back. When you accumulate without intention, you trade hours of your life for things that often don't contribute to your happiness or growth. There is a different way to live, and it begins with redefining success. Success is not how much you can stack on top of your life. Success is how much meaning remains once you remove what never mattered. Wealth isn't just the ability to buy, it's the ability to walk away. Freedom isn't the privilege of owning more, it's the privilege of needing less. And confidence isn't built by impressing others, it's built by no longer needing to. When you break free from the pressure to accumulate, you reclaim choice. You stop buying out of impulse. You stop upgrading out of insecurity. You stop pursuing goals out of comparison. Instead, you live from intention. You own what serves you. You pursue what fulfills you. You invest in what grows you. You acquire what aligns with the life you genuinely want, not the life you're told to want. And for the first time, you begin to feel something rare in modern life: enoughness. Enoughness is not stagnation. It's arrival. It's the moment you stop chasing validation and start living from contentment. And once you experience enoughness, accumulation loses its power over you because you no longer need more to feel like you are enough. Chapter 6. Learn to ignore the unimportant. Your attention is one of the most valuable resources you possess, and yet it is one of the easiest things to lose control of. Every day you are surrounded by endless inputs, notifications, opinions, requests, trends, arguments, expectations, and temptations. Not all of these things are harmful, but most of them are unimportant. And the truth is, the unimportant is more dangerous than the harmful because it sneaks into your life quietly. Harmful things are loud. Unimportant things are subtle. They don't destroy you outright. They distract you slowly. When you fail to ignore the unimportant, you pay for it in mental fragmentation. Your attention gets divided into tiny fragments until no single task gets the full strength of your mind. You check your phone while eating, while working, while resting, while walking, while doing nothing. You consume information you don't need, engage in conversations that don't matter, and react to situations that have nothing to do with your goals or values. And the worst part is you often don't even question it. It just feels normal. Learning to ignore the unimportant is not about becoming indifferent or careless. It's about becoming selective. Selective with your time, selective with your responses, selective with your emotional energy. The world will always present you with more than you can handle. Your job is not to handle everything. Your job is to decide what deserves handling. The skill of ignoring is not laziness. It is intelligence. It is the intelligence to focus on what truly moves your life forward and let everything else fall away. Most people treat their attention as if it were infinite. They assume they can afford to care about everything. But attention is limited. You only get so much per day, and once it's spent, it's gone. If you use it on gossip, distractions, arguments, comparisons, and random stimulation, don't be surprised if you have nothing left for creativity, growth, relationships, or meaningful work. Focus requires capacity. Capacity requires guarding your attention. A good place to begin is by asking a simple question whenever something demands your involvement. Is this mine? Not every problem is your problem. Not every conversation is your conversation. Not every fight is your fight. Not every crisis is your crisis. We have a tendency to inherit the stress of others, the expectations of others, and the urgency of others. But when you say yes to things that don't belong to you, you automatically say no to things that do. Another helpful question is, does this change anything important? Many things that feel urgent are actually irrelevant. You could spend hours defending an opinion online, arguing with someone who won't change their mind, consuming news that won't change your life, or keeping up with trends that will be forgotten next month. Modern society rewards reaction, not reflection. But your life improves through reflection, not reaction. Ignoring the unimportant also applies to emotions. Not every emotion deserves a response. Not every impulse deserves action. Not every thought deserves attention. You can feel something without chasing it. You can notice something without participating in it. Emotional discipline is a form of mental minimalism. It allows you to conserve energy for what actually matters, for decisions that shape your future instead of impulses that last 5 minutes. On a practical level, ignoring the unimportant might look like turning off notifications that don't matter, refusing to check news every hour, unfollowing accounts that trigger comparison, reducing digital noise, or avoiding conversations that drain you. But the real shift is internal. It's the moment you no longer feel compelled to respond to everything, to fix everything, to prove everything, or to be everywhere. Silence becomes a choice. Non-reaction becomes a strategy, and peace becomes a result. We often assume that successful or fulfilled people are the ones who do more. But look closely, and you'll notice something interesting. High performers, deep thinkers, and fulfilled individuals are not defined by how much they do. They are defined by how much they ignore. They ignore distractions. They ignore noise. They ignore irrelevant opinions. They ignore drama. They ignore comparisons. They ignore everything that pulls them away from their purpose. Learning to ignore is a form of strength, not avoidance. Avoidance is fear-driven. Ignoring is clarity-driven. Avoidance runs away from responsibility. Ignoring refuses to waste energy on what doesn't matter. One keeps you small. The other keeps you focused. And here's the most freeing you do. Life doesn't just get lighter, it becomes profoundly richer. Conclusion. The promise of simplicity has always been the same. When you remove what doesn't matter, what does matter finally has room to breathe. Throughout this audiobook, we explored how a life that is less crowded, less rushed, less reactive, and less burdened becomes a life that is more meaningful, more focused, more peaceful, and more fulfilling. Not because simplicity gives you more, but because it gives you more of what you actually need. The world will always push you toward more. More consumption, more commitments, more pressure, more speed, more noise. It will never voluntarily create space for you to think, to pause, to rest, to reflect, or to be intentional. That space has to be built by you. Simplicity is that building process. It is the conscious reclaiming of your time, energy, attention, and identity from forces that would otherwise scatter them. A simple life is not a small life. It is not a life without ambition, curiosity, or achievement. In fact, simplicity strengthens ambition by removing the distractions that dilute it. It strengthens relationships by reducing the social clutter that crowds intimacy. It strengthens creativity by freeing mental bandwidth. It strengthens self-respect because you are no longer abandoning yourself for every demand that shows up. Simplicity doesn't shrink life, it sharpens it. It makes life more deliberate. The real challenge is not understanding simplicity. It is sustaining it. Anyone can simplify when overwhelmed. Anyone can declutter when stressed. Anyone can pause when burned out. But to make simplicity a philosophy, you must make it a choice. Even when things are going well, you simplify not just to escape chaos, but to protect clarity. You choose less, not because you are deprived, but because you are selective. You say no, not because you are antisocial, but because you are aligned. Simplicity continues to reveal its benefits. The longer you practice it, you begin to notice that peace is not a luxury. It is a result. Presence is not an accident. It is cultivated. Fulfillment is not found. It is designed. And time is not just something you use. It is something you honor. When life slows just enough for awareness to enter, you start seeing the patterns that shape you. You begin choosing those patterns instead of inheriting them. In a culture that constantly encourages accumulation, simplicity asks a better question. What is enough? Enough is the moment you stop believing you need to prove your worth through possessions, through productivity, through perfection, or through performance. Enough is the moment you release the pressure to impress and begin the journey to live. Enough is where anxiety ends and living begins. If there is one final truth to carry with you, it is this. A meaningful life is not the result of what you add, but what you remove. You remove the noise to hear yourself again. You remove the excess to find clarity again. You remove the distractions to feel purpose again. You remove the unnecessary so the necessary can shine. Simplicity is not disappearance. It is distillation. It distills your life down to the essentials, the people you love, the work that matters, the values that guide you, the habits that sustain you, the dreams that feel true to who you are becoming. When you make space for those things, life becomes richer, not because it becomes bigger, but because it becomes truer. You don't need to wait for the world to quiet down. The world may never quiet down, but you can turn down the noise. You can choose slower rhythms. You can choose deeper relationships. You can choose selective ambition. You can choose clear priorities. You can choose a life that is light enough to carry and meaningful enough to be proud of. Less is more is not a slogan. It is a compass. And if you follow it, not only will your life become simpler, it will become unmistakably yours.